your eggs, your dead embryos, your produced waste that you take off, your shells and your dead embryos, your dead chicks, and processing, you produce waste, you have your second grade chicks that you do not like to deliver, and so on. So there are a couple of moments where you are producing waste. And also you have return flows. What do I mean with that? If I look at the egg trays, the incubator trays, you set your eggs on the trays, you bring them to the setter on the trolleys, you transfer them, and then the trays have to go back to the storage room, to the setting room. Those eggs that have to go back to the setting room, or those trays that go back to the setting room, are almost by definition dirty. So you basically bring from transfer dirty, not dirty in the sense of dirty, but dirty in the sense of not full control, bring them back in your fresh eggs, your new eggs that are just arrived from that beautiful clean farm where you had no problem. Also, from your takeoff, you have transferred your eggs, you put them in the baskets, you bring the basket to the hatcher, you hatch them, you take off the chicks, and the baskets are brought back into the transfer room to have a new set of chicks, of eggs being hatching in the hatches. So also there you go back from dirty to relatively clean. Also when you transport chicks, especially what nowadays we transport a lot of day-old chicks in hatcher baskets, or not a lot, but quite often, you can see that in the transport chicks, they have to, if they are transported in hatching baskets, basically we have to bring them back to the transport also. And that's what I mean. Those flows is what you have to consider. Those flows of clean to dirty. How does it work out? You want to have your eggs as clean as possible in the setter. So you disinfect them perhaps between the storage, between the setting and the setter. That makes your storage room a dirty room. So everybody that works there should be considered to be a dirty, a risk person, and should not mix with the people in the setter room. And the setter room people should not go back to the storage room because they are potentially a dirty area, if that's what you want to achieve, if that's how you want to approach it. At transfer, you change from more or less clean to more or less dirty, and because you have your bangers and so on, and you want to make sure that your eggs go clean into the hatcher. So perhaps you want to put a disinfection after transfer, especially when you have a lot of bangers. That can be a potential danger for your hatches, spreading out problems in that situation. After hatching, you're hatching in the hatches, your birds are, or your eggs are exploding again. The ones that are dirty, you have indeed an increased risk. So everything after the hatcher is getting dirty again, and you do not want to have a flow from dirty back to clean. So from takeoff, processing, storage, etc., you should not go back to that clean area. And once you know what is dirty and what is clean, and that can be different from hatchery to hatchery. Some people will say, oh, I consider this to be a clean area, I consider this to be a dirty area. But once you have made that determination, this is my clean area, this is what I consider dirty, then you follow the flows, those 5 flows that I talked about: eggs, materials, and people, and also air. So basically trolleys, eggs, chicks, and so on, make sure that they don't go back from dirty to clean without being brought under control. What kind of flows are we dealing with? Eggs, normally that's quite a clear flow, because you can see it, it comes from the storage, you go to the setter, you go to the transfer, you go to the candling, they turn into chicks in the hatches, and then you process them. So normally you have to consider them up to the hatching. It's normally quite a clear flow. But be aware, for instance, of great bay egg. eggs, or trading eggs, or handling eggs. If you trade eggs, where does the material come in from what you have been doing? Who is picking up those grade B eggs? Are they from people that are collecting those eggs and are no control? Then be aware that that might be a potential risk. Also, your materials, your trays and your trolleys and so on, etc. If you have to bring them back from dirty to clean, it needs cleaning and it needs perhaps even disinfection, depending on how you want to do it. Make sure, but that's a relatively easy task, but make sure that you know where the stuff is going. Of course, the biggest problem that we're always having is people. You separate your people from dirty and clean areas, and you mark them, preferably with different colors, brown for storage and white for incubation. And of course, you want to make sure that they change clothes, or at least boots, or shoes between the areas. People are always the problem, because if people are instructed well, they do whatever you need to do, whatever they need to do, unless there is an exception. And there are always exceptions. So if you have an alarm going on, who's running in? Well, the guy that was now just working, and you have an alarm in the setters, the alarm goes off, who comes running in? The guy that was just at this moment working on the chick processing. Oh, but that's a dirty area. Do you allow him to come back? Well, if that's your choice, then that's your choice. Maintenance people, they had a problem in the takeoff, or they had a problem in the transfer room, and now they have a problem in the setter, and they bring that toolbox and come back. If you find that acceptable, up to you, but you have to realize that that's what's happening. So make sure that you check it, and make sure that you check if that's really the way it's done. Airflow is always a little bit more difficult, because air is not something that you can see. But you want to have the air going in the same way from the cleanest area basically to dirty and not back. Now, how do you guide airflow? A lot of people use doors. Now, one thing is, doors are hardly ever airtight. That's one thing. But if you have a transfer, then you see that your doors are open 8 hours a day, because nobody wants to open that door manually all the time. So often what you see, even if you don't have those spring doors, so doors that open more or less automatically, you see the little wooden triangles on the floor, those little pieces of wood that people use to keep the doors open. If I would be working in a hatchery, I probably would do the same, because I don't want to bother every 5 minutes by opening a door that basically is then closing after me, and in 5 minutes time I'm coming in with a new trolley, and then I have to open again. Automatic doors, seal doors, they're expensive, and again, they are still a nuisance, and you still have an airflow. For me, the best door is the difference in air pressure. Make sure that the air pressure where you are in the clean area is higher than in the next dirty area. So you have the highest pressure in your clean area, and then you see it basically going down and moving toward more dirty areas. So you have the clean air coming in, hopefully, because sometimes you see even that people are taking in clean air that is coming from the exhaust of your hatches, for instance, and then of course the clean air is not as clean as you think, but you have the highest pressure in your cleanest area, and hopefully you have it even positive compared to the outside, because otherwise it might come in an extreme situation even from the outside. So basically what you do, you want to have your setters as clean as possible. If you have them, let's say on 10 Pascal as for instance, then the other rooms should be lower. So from your cleanest area, you want to see the air moving to the other areas. Every area where you do not want to have air coming back to the previous area has to have a lower, or should have a lower air pressure. And that helps you to control that airflow. But it also means that when somebody opens a door and the pressure drops, the fan should speed up. So preferably, we even have pressure-controlled fans. They are available and they are very useful for those kind of things. One of the problems that we are always facing, or one of the situations that we're always facing is hatches. And what you do see is that hatches have quite a lot of connection between each other. So if you have one hatcher with a problem, the chance that it will contaminate another hatcher is there, even when you have plaintiffs. But why? Well, for instance, people are walking in during the evening to control the hatch timing, or to do some maintenance, or to see if your chicks are already there. And then they go to the next hatcher, and that first hatcher was contaminated, second hatcher is not, and then it might be that you have a problem. So what we do, we prefer to see the risk hatches to be inspected last, but even better than that, try to get your hatcher rooms on a daily hatch base. So it preferably, and nowadays you see that much more often, you separate your hatcher rooms based on a hatch date. If you have a hatcher room with chicks hatching today, and again chicks hatching in 2 days from now, and you have a problem today, that might be that in 2 days again you have the same problem, simply because there's cross-contamination. So nowadays, but that's easier in bigger hatcheries and in newer hatcheries than in older hatcheries, you see that we separate the hatcher rooms by day of hatch. And even there, you do not want to have your hatches contaminating each other. So if you have a risk hatchery, make sure that, or try to identify them and try to separate them by checking them last, processing them last, cleaning them last, and so on. It's all doable, but it takes organization. It takes standard operating procedures. It takes risk management. It takes hazard control. I gave you a couple of examples of existing hatcheries. These are not imaginary hatcheries, these are existing hatcheries. This is a very small one. Egg storage on the right side, the office above it. Then you go to the setters, you go to the transfer, then you go to the hatches, you process your chicks in the bottom on the left side, and you wash your crates and you dump your waste into that waste area. Let's follow the flows. Let's follow the flow, first of all, the flow of eggs. If you bring in your eggs at the egg storage, you follow the flow. They go to the setter, transfer, the hatches, and then the processing. No problem. The only problem is when your eggs are coming in contaminated, then they will be everywhere contaminated. So, do you have the full control in your egg storage that you think you have? Depends on what happens outside. How much control do you have in your egg storage room, in your trucks, and on your farms? But it's doable. But you have to realize that there is a risk area. Air, you put your setters on the highest pressure, and it will basically go to both ways, to the egg storage on the left and to the transfer of the hatches on the right. So if designed correctly, this is doable. Trays and trolleys. I have transferred my eggs from the setters to the hatching baskets at the transfer room. And now I have to get them, the trays and trolleys, back to the egg storage because they need to be used again. How do I get them back? Yeah, through that setter corridor, because that's the only way, unless I want to go outside. Where do I clean them? In the washing room. So how do I get my trays and trolleys back clean and controlled from the washing room back to the egg storage. It is doable, because if I transfer in the morning, I keep my trays there, I process my chicks, I clean everything, the processing room, and I bring then my eggs or my trays to the washing room. I wash them, I clean them, I even disinfect them perhaps, and I bring them through the clean processing room that is being cleaned in the meantime, and the clean transfer room. I can get them back to the egg storage. So it is possible if I have strict procedures. Waste. How do I get my waste from transfer and processing? Actually only through my washing room, through my hatchery room. I can probably make it through my washing room, my processing waste. Transfer perhaps might be a little bit more difficult, but also there I can probably organize it. The biggest problem that I have is people. If I have my people coming in and I bring them to process my chicks, what happens if I have a coffee break or a lunch break or at the end of the day? How do I get my people back to, let's say, the office to have lunch, or at the end of the day to change and to go out? There's only one way, and that's through my setter room. So whatever I do, my processing, my washing, my people working waste, people are pulling the chicks, will have to go through my cleanest area, and that's probably not what I want. Can we change this? Well, yes, but not without a cost. We can make, for instance, a corridor in the top, and then at that moment in time we can put the materials, but also the people, through that corridor. So for people and for hardware, you can separate the waste in a little bit better way. So there are ways to do it, but not without a cost. Once you have this set up the way it is, you have to live with it, or you have to make significant cost, and even then it's still not ideal. It's better, but still not ideal. Now, I will not go into a lot of different designs, because that's not the purpose of this presentation, but I will give you a design that nowadays is getting more common. I just give you a couple of examples. For instance, this design, and again, it's not about what kind of brand it is or what kind of machine it is, whatever, it's just the way of thinking. If you look at this design and you look at the eggs and chick flows, the eggs are coming in on the left-hand side in the long and short storage space. In this particular case, this is an existing hatchery. They had long and short storage. They go to the setter room, where they basically are set them on trays. They are disinfected. From the disinfection, they go to the setters. They go to the transfer, and then the eggs go to the hatches, into the processing room, egg storage, and out. So for the eggs and the chick flow, there's no problem, and that's normally the case. The hardware flows for the setters, the setter trays are coming in, are used in the setting areas. They disinfect the eggs on the trays, go through the setters, are transferred, and then go back to tray storage and even tray washing, if you want it there, back to the short storage or the long storage, back to the setting area. This is doable. There's no cross contamination. The hatches, so that's the setters, the hatches, they are filled in the transfer room, the hatchet trays. They go to the hatches, they go to the processing, and then they go at the bottom through the box wash and box store and go back to the transfer room. So also there's no cross contamination. Chicks the waste being taken off, and basically going into that area, into the waste area, both from transfer and from processing. So Often nowadays we have vacuum systems that go over the top, that have a closed-in system that is completely uncontrolled. That works fine as well. The people from the setting areas are considered to be dirty people or people with less control. They can go through the tray wash in store to the office. That's not clean, but they were not clean anyway. So the people from the center areas can go also in the same direction, but then to the transfer. And the people from the takeoff and processing and waste can also go in their own way to the office. So there's no necessarily cross-contamination from people coming from dirty areas, processing and waste and so on, back to the setters or back to the transfer. So this works quite well. Also the air can be controlled quite well. If you have it pressure controlled, you can do it quite well. But it's always good to follow. It's always good to take a look at a map and make those circular drawings. Make sure where it's happening. I show you one design, and it's not about the type of machine or whatever, because it can happen with all kinds of design and with all kinds of machines. But sometimes you see that small mistakes are coming in. This is an example of a very good design with only one small, well, perhaps there were more small errors, but this was one small error that I want to show. This is a design. The red things are setters, the yellow blocks are hatches. Between the setters on the very left and the hatches more or less in the middle, you have the transfer room. And then right from the hatches you have the takeoff at the bottom, and you have the counting and processing and so on. First of all, let's look at the hatch baskets. Now, we start at the transfer room between the red part, the red blocks and the yellow blocks. The eggs are transferred into the hatching baskets. The hatching baskets are then clean, are going into the hatching room, are getting dirty because of the bangers and so on. So they are going dirty into the processing room. The chicks are taken off, and the hatch baskets are then from the chick takeoff, the second red arrow, are going down, are cleaned there, are washed and perhaps even disinfected, then are cleaned again, follow the green arrow to the left into the chick box storage, and then basically are used again for transfer. So a perfect cycle. You start clean, they become dirty, but before they are used for transfer again, you clean them and you keep them separated. No problem at all. Then you follow the second curve, your chick boxes. So you have the clean chick boxes before the green arrow. You fill them up in the processing room. Those chicks are in a way dirty because you don't have no full control over what's happening. You put them in the storage room and you bring them to the farm. Okay, perfect. Then they come back to the farm. Then they are dirty from the chick boxes, but also dirty because you don't know what happened on the farm. You bring them in the bottom to that room. You waste or you wash them again, and then, okay, they are dirty coming into the washing room, then they are clean, but then they have to go through that takeoff room to be into that storage room for chick boxes. And that washing room or the takeoff room was dirty. So you cannot guarantee that after washing your chick boxes stay clean. So there is a chance that you store them dirty, and that basically means